No, I don't know where they are.
Why do we want freedom? Why do we want freedom? What are we here for? Say it now. 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 What do we want? Freedom. Where do we want it? Now. What do we want? Freedom. Where do we want it? Now. What do we want? Freedom. Where do we want it? Now. What do we want? Freedom. Where do we want it? Now. Free Carmelo. Free Carmelo. Free Carmelo. Free Carmelo. I stand there looking. I stand there looking. That's what y'all do to us. This is what y'all do to us. This is what y'all do to us. Free Carmelo. Free Carmelo. Free Carmelo. Free Carmelo.
Hello, everybody. I'm Sean Rabb with Eat and Chuckle. We are in the Fox 4 digital studio. A verdict has been reached in the Karmelo Anthony trial. It's going to be announced in about 10 minutes. And we're watching now the tension that is growing outside of the Collin County Courthouse.
Yes, so they're holding signs and chanting. People are holding signs there and chanting. As you can see, the noise, the chants are getting louder and louder. This jury started deliberating at around 10:52 this morning. So they have been deliberating for 3 hours, and we know they have reached that verdict, which will be announced at 2:05. This whole process really has moved fairly quickly. If you think about it, just last Monday, jury selection started. And by Wednesday, the jury was seated. And over the weekend, prosecutors rested their case. The defense rested its case
Let me talk about
yesterday.
this for a minute and what's happening right now. This is the tension that has been growing in Collin County since 2025 when this took place, okay? And these kinds of face-to-face, emotion-rising, shouting matches really do no good, but we've seen them become more and more intense, even as this trial has progressed, Eden, as you were talking about, since last week. Emotions are boiling high on both sides, and these kind of verbal confrontations that we're looking at here right now, Eden, just show us really what's right under the surface that has been brought out with this particular case.
Absolutely. And I think this is probably going to paint the picture of how things are going to be once the verdict is announced, which we are waiting for at 2:05 this afternoon. So in less than 10 minutes, but we're already seeing tensions. And this is how it's been over the last couple of days. But really now we're seeing it escalate as people are facing each other, holding signs, yelling, chanting, and things appear to be getting a little hostile.
Yeah, and certainly we hope the cooler heads will ultimately prevail here. This emotion does not help or change anything that 12 people have decided about Karmelo Anthony's future. Let's just talk about that. He could be found guilty of murder, and there's never been a question about what happened. It's been a question about what happened. In other words, he's never denied. In fact, he admitted that he did stab the young man, Austin Metcalf. That's not the question. The question is, was it murder in the state of Texas? You have to prove intent. Did he intend to kill or cause serious bodily harm, cause death? Or was it, in fact, self-defense, as he has maintained and his defense team has maintained? Or will this jury acquit him and find him not guilty and believe it was self-defense? Or will he be found guilty of manslaughter, a lesser charge?
Right. And that was the case this morning. So the jury was able to consider manslaughter as a lesser charge to first-degree murder. Obviously, manslaughter is a reckless killing. Meanwhile, murder includes the intent that this was deliberate, that he intended to do this. So that is the question here. Was this intentional, or was this kind of just a quick reaction to fearing for his safety and claiming self-defense? So we're going to see which way the jury leans with this.
And depending on what the young man is found guilty of, that changes the range of punishment.
Mm-hmm.
Murder is 5 to 99 years. The manslaughter charge carries 2 to 20 years.
Mm-hmm.
And so this jury will ultimately also decide his punishment fate. Once the verdict is announced, the punishment phase should start today because of the time that the verdict is coming, 2 o'clock. So the punishment phase should start this afternoon. And then certainly tomorrow it will continue, and which has moved at a rapid pace. This trial will probably wrap by week's end.
Mm-hmm. So we have our Lori Brown, who is in the courtroom. So she had told us that, if the jury had reached a decision by 2 o'clock, that the the punishment phase would play out starting today. But if the jury were to reach a decision later on at 4, then that would happen tomorrow. So it looks like things have moved quickly. As we've said, it's hard to believe that just last Monday was really jury selection, and now the jury has come to a decision, which we're going to find out in 4 minutes. So hopefully this starts right on time at 2:05. But as we're watching right now, live pictures of people protesting, of tensions escalating, of just kind of a hostile picture that we're seeing right here. It's something also important to note. I mean, this has been a racially charged case, right? And the defense has argued this was not about race. Race is not at play here. But as we can see here, I mean, you see people who say, no, race is at the center of all of this.
Well, and the prosecution certainly said race was not a part of it. And the judge as well in this case said it was not a case about race, but you cannot deny that just the facts of the case and what we've seen play out since then and what we're happening now is because the defendant is black, the victim is white, and that's the bottom line.
Mm-hmm.
But again, this is what I alluded to when I said this has brought out what's bubbling right beneath the surface. This should be a question of whether one youth acted in self-defense or whether he committed murder, period. And if justice is blind, that's where it would rest. But of course, even as you know, all the 3 blacks who could have qualified for the jury were all stricken by the prosecution. That caused the defense to raise the Batson challenge early on. The judge disavowed their challenge, and that has been a sticking point for people who support Karmelo Anthony.
Right. There were 3 potential black jurors who could have been on the jury. And I believe either 3 or just a few of them are educators. And so they felt that they could not be a part of the jury. So there was some controversy surrounding that decision there. I feel as though we should probably give some background information as we await for, the jury to announce its verdict. This was a 12-person jury. There were 6 alternates. That included 11 women and 7 men. No black jurors, which really led to controversy. I mean, some people felt like because this case is racially charged that there should have been black jurors there. This all happened in 2025. This was during a track meet in Frisco at Centennial High School. Carmelo Anthony was sitting under the Memorial High School team tent. And something interesting that was brought up yesterday is one of the students who testified was asked, is this normal? And he said, when it comes to track and field, it's not rare, it's not unheard of. It is a social sport where sometimes, people from different schools are under another student's or another team's tent. And so, but he didn't say it was common or it happened often, but it was something that took place from time to time.
So if you listen to some of the testimony of the witnesses, and again, the state, I believe, called 21 witnesses, going from memory. The defense, I believe, called a half dozen. Some of those witnesses for the state said, it doesn't happen, it's rare, it doesn't happen at all. Witnesses for the defense says, hey, it does happen. So that's kind of a draw there. Who's telling the truth there, right? Does it happen? Doesn't it happen? Okay. The question is what happened under that tent, and whatever happened, if young Austin Metcalf put his hands on young Carmelo Anthony, did the defense, did the violence that responded to that, was it above what it should have been? Was it adequate? That's the question. Was it in self-defense? Was it a vicious intent to take his life? That's what the jurors are asked to decide.
Let's also get into some of the closing arguments. Attorney Mike Howard, this is for the defense because the defense went first during closing. Oh, okay.
Let's go to Alex Boyer.
Alex, when I spoke to you during the noon show, you said that you saw prayer circles. It looks like things are certainly different now as we are watching what's unfolding behind you. Just describe the mood. What is going on? It seems like there's a lot of tension.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to step out of the way so that you can actually get a better view for what we are seeing here right now. We're about 20 feet away from the other camera angle that you guys have been seeing at this moment. Can you guys hear me in the studio? Can you guys hear me back at the studio? Okay, so I'm standing about 20 feet back from where that other camera angle is, where you've been seeing some of these live pictures. So we're kind of standing behind the crowd. I can tell you that there are barricades that are lined up right at the end of this driveway that has been closed off the entire time this trial has been in session, to try to minimize the amount of people who are driving through and accessing this area that leads into the front of the courthouse. I can tell you that just within the past few seconds, I've noticed some of the crowd disperse a little bit. I can tell you that it appears that we have a heightened police presence that has shown up within the past few seconds. Seems like they're trying to show kind of some unification here in front of those barricades. I'm counting about, looks like at least 7 or 8 uniformed officers right on the other side of that barricade, separating this crowd to the entrance of the courthouse. Of course, the emotions running high as we get into now just past 2:05 p.m. when we know members of the media were going to be allowed back inside the courtroom to hear what that verdict is. You know, I can tell you when I first got here a few minutes ago, when we heard that a verdict was going to be announced, people were initially scattered out of the way, kind of standing under trees since it is so hot out here. When they heard that there was a verdict that had been reached, that's when you started to see people, some of them running towards the front here to kind of get a spot as close as they can. And then they began chanting, many of them talking about justice for Carmelo. I'm going to throw it back to you in the studio.
Your coverage, by the way, has been simply outstanding. You and Lori Brown have done great work since the very beginning of this. And now we're coming to this heightened emotional culmination, at least to the guilt or innocence phase of this trial. Then the punishment phase, the sentencing phase, will begin immediately.
Yes, we were expecting that at 2:05, and it looks like the jury has reached a verdict and it's going to be announced. So we're going to bring you the details as soon as we find out what they have reached. But I think we should probably reset, if you're just joining us right now, as to what is going on right now. The jury started deliberating at 10:52 this morning. And at 2:05, they have now reached a verdict. We were waiting for that verdict to be announced. 2:07 right now. These things sometimes take some time. And things have certainly escalated outside of the Collin County Courthouse. You can see law enforcement out there trying to, keep everything calm, trying to get people away, it looks like, from the steps of the courthouse. But tensions are rising. At one point, we saw 2 people very close to each other exchanging some words, and we could hear yelling. Earlier, when we were on the noon show, Alex Boyer was outside of the courthouse, and he was saying that, he saw prayer circles. At one point, I think we were hearing someone chanting in the background and speaking. And so things have certainly escalated even within the last, I would say, 2 hours that he's been out there. And I'm sure once this verdict is announced, it will only get worse. But this, as you mentioned, Sean, this doesn't really help the situation here, right? The verdict is the verdict.
Right. It doesn't. And it could lead to even people having conflict with police out there and getting arrested out there because of their emotions. These moments are very tense and very intense, but you have to control your emotions in this moment. And so we have to watch that as well as watch what's happening in the courtroom. It's going to be coming down. If the jurors are back in, it could very well be that they're being polled individually, asking if the verdict is theirs and theirs alone. And then that'll be read by either the judge or the foreperson. what that verdict is.
And because this trial really has moved quickly, I kind of want to get into some of the developments that took place this morning. So the jury was able to consider manslaughter as a lesser charge to first-degree murder. Manslaughter is, just reckless killing, right? He did not arguing that Carmelo Anthony did not intend to kill someone. He just happened to kill someone. Meanwhile, murder includes the intent that this was deliberate. So the jury is having to decide between manslaughter as that lesser charge or first-degree murder. Now, as we talked about this earlier, the difference really is the maximum sentence, right? So for manslaughter, the maximum sentence is 20 years. For for murder, first-degree murder, the maximum sentence is really life in prison. So Carmelo Anthony was facing between 5 years to 99 years in prison. During closing arguments, the state actually waived the right to open. So the defense went first. And so on Carmelo Anthony's side, his attorney, Mike Howard, argued that Anthony was invited into the tent by somebody he knew and that nobody had the right to use force to eject him in terms of, some of the witnesses have said he was pushed, he was shoved. They used different words to describe that physical altercation there. Attorney Howard also claimed that Anthony did have the right to defend himself against somebody much bigger than him. That was something else that was brought up, was the difference in size between both of these 17-year-old boys. But prosecutor Bill Worski, he argued that Anthony showed up with a mindset that, which is why he had a knife with him. Prosecutors argued that self-defense is not a defense in this case because Anthony provoked Austin Metcalf into pushing him when he said, "Touch me and see what happens." So the question here is, was this self-defense or was this deliberate? Did he intend to do this? What happened here? That is what the jury is going to have to decide on. Or was this a case of manslaughter, as we just mentioned, the lesser charge that was presented this morning to the jury that they could also consider?
And in a case like this, you talk about Bill Worski waiving his opening opportunity in closing arguments. That's a strategic move, right? Prosecutors, because the burden of proof is on the state, they get to open, the defense makes its close, and then they get to rebut that, to have the last word. He wanted to stack all of his time. So he deferred, if you will hold ours and reserve it and wait, so he could have this powerful, emotional, planned close, which is what he did. That's what an attorney is supposed to do, to try to press their claim to the jurors. And the last voice you hear, maybe the last impression. And so we'll have to see what this jury decides. One of the interesting things, and I think we've talked about it a little bit on our air, is that Bill Worski and Toby Shook have worked together on some of the biggest cases. They were both prosecutors in the same time at the Dallas County District Attorney's Office. Some of the most historic cases in North Texas, they worked on them together. Even as special prosecutors for a case down in Kaufman County where an assistant district attorney was assassinated. And now they, on another historic case, are at opposite tables in the courtroom.
And we will see how the jury decides, what decision they have come to. We are waiting for them to announce their verdict. This case certainly got national attention. Really from the very beginning, whether you live in Texas or not. I think many people have heard about this case. We've seen national media come over to Collin County outside of the courtroom. We've seen TikTokers, YouTubers. It has gained a lot of interest. Again, these are two 17-year-old boys at the time. There was no evidence that they knew each other prior to this incident, but it has garnered a lot of attention. And so I think that is also part of the reason why you're seeing so many people out there. It has raised a lot of emotions too.
And mainstream attention. New York Times, CNN, Fox News Channel, News Nation, all covering this. And we've seen either family members of these folks involved or those who are speaking for them all across TV in the weeks leading up to this trial. Now, even though judge imposed a gag order on those immediately involved, there have been those outside voices, those surrogate voices that have been speaking for both sides along the way. So with the sheriff's deputies there now, the Collin County Sheriff's deputies, things have quieted down somewhat. They were there and kind of allowing people to have their voice, but they've kind of stepped up their presence as we're now getting closer to learning what that verdict is today.
Something that was interesting to me during this trial is, and this seemed to have shocked some people too, is we did not hear from Austin Metcalf's twin brother. He did not testify during this trial. We also didn't hear from Carmelo Anthony either about this. And I think that was probably strategic too, in terms of not having them testify.
Well, first, since you mentioned Carmelo Anthony first, let's talk about that first. You cannot hold it against me if I don't testify in my own defense, even if my defense is self-defense. If my attorneys feel like we have proven our point, we have proven our position without your testimony, because remember, anytime you take the stand, you open yourself up to cross-examination. And a skilled attorney, no matter how innocent you may be, a skilled attorney can press his claim through you. As for Austin Metcalf's twin, I don't know that they felt like they needed to bring that emotional wound to the surface to press their claim and prove their point to jurors. Through video, through tearful testimony of many of their 21 witnesses, I think folks relived that moment. We heard about how they were trying to do the chest compressions, and we heard all of that. I think they felt we don't need to bring him back through that and let him live through that moment. Remember, the family members, as the medical examiner talked, as some of that testimony went forth, the family members of Metcalf left the courtroom. So no need to put him through that trauma in front of the jury. I think they felt they were okay without that. And I think the defense felt the same thing, that they were okay without Carmelo Anthony taking the stand.
And for people who are watching and maybe wondering too, the prosecution called 21 witnesses. Initially, I believe 35 witnesses were expected, and the defense called a handful of witnesses. I think I've heard from different legal experts that the defense really doesn't even have to call witnesses in this case. All of this falls on the prosecution side in terms of trying to prove that he is guilty. So that is why, if you think, oh, there's a disparity, why were there 21 witnesses on one side and a handful of witnesses on the other side? That is probably why you see a higher number on the prosecutor's side.
Well, sometimes less is better. Okay, we believe the jurors are back in the courtroom, according to the families are in the courtroom. Okay. The judge is not yet on the bench. The families are now back in the courtroom. And, time is very flexible. There's something in Texas called legal time, lawyer time. And whatever it is, it's not what's on the clock on the wall. So this is a big moment, right? And this is going to be a moment for these jurors. They've been brought into this. It's a supercharged case. Maybe they hadn't reached conclusions. And we hope that they were honest in voir dire, that they had not come to any conclusions about this case. Certainly they heard about it to some extent. You can hear about a case and not make conclusions about it and still be a great juror. And we pray that's so, but they've been in this crucible. They know what's happening outside. They know the pressure on this. And so we'll soon hear the verdict in this case.
Yes, we should. As we've talked about this, this has gotten national attention, which is why so many people have come out to protest, on whichever side that they're on, to whether it's to defend Austin Metcalf or Carmelo Anthony. And so it looks like things have certainly calmed down. That was not the case when we got on about 20 minutes ago or so. So I guess that's good news there, that things are starting to calm down. But we're going to see, how all of this plays out. And we'll go from there. This was a 12-person jury. 600 people were part of that initial jury selection. They narrowed it down to 12 people. And over the course of 2.5 days, the prosecution called 21 witnesses. The defense called a handful of witnesses. And so now it is this case is really in the hands of this jury. It is up to them. They have made their decision. And so we are patiently awaiting to find out what that decision is.
Yeah,
what have they decided?
It's done now. They've made their decision. They've come to a verdict. And we'll soon hear that. And then the punishment phase, sentencing phase will begin. And Austin Metcalf's brother is in the courtroom next to his mom right now. And so this has been an emotional burden for all involved. All these kids are good kids. They all had good grades. They all had bright futures. And in a moment, whatever happened under that tent has derailed a number of lives here.
I think it was also during the trial, people have talked about how emotional it was. I think you mentioned this too, Sean, that having to see the surveillance footage, having to see just what unfolded in the moments after this altercation, this interaction between these two 17-year-old students. And so, yeah, this is probably, I would imagine, emotionally taxing for both sides, for both families, and to just consider that a lot of these friends who were part of the track team, who went to school with both students, it's got to be very emotional for them as well to be a part of this and to witness all of this play out. So we will see, what the jury has decided momentarily. Again, we were expecting for that decision to be announced at 2:05. It is 2:20 right now, so they're a little bit late, right? We're a little bit 15 minutes behind schedule, but I think that sometimes happens in these kinds of cases.
Right, and so we're really not late. If we thought it would come at 2:05, it could come at any time now. We know it's coming. We do know it's coming. Families have returned to the courtroom. I can tell you there are sweaty palms. There are sweaty foreheads, hearts are racing. Everyone in that courtroom, on either side, everyone in that courtroom has the same kind of anxiety at this moment as they wait for words that will echo in their hearts and minds long beyond today.
And there was question about, okay, well, how long is this jury going to deliberate for? That was the question this morning. We were wondering, right? Because this is kind of their first time really talking to each other about what the evidence that was presented to them, right? So this is their first time, saying, well, I thought this, or I thought that, or what did you make of this? And so really for them to come to a conclusion, to come to a decision within 3 hours of deliberating, I thought, okay, that's fairly soon. Maybe we'll expect it later this evening or tomorrow, but it sounds like they have come to a consensus.
Sure, and really there's no formula
Mhm.
for how juries work. Over my years, I've had an opportunity to interview a number of jurors. Oftentimes, they'll return to the jury room and immediately take a vote to find out where they are in the room. And then they start working through evidence or questions or talking out loud amongst themselves from there to see which way they move, if they move at all. So we don't know where they started, but we do know starting the deliberations at 10:52 and then getting word when we did a
Mhm.
little after 1, I guess,
Mhm.
that they reached a verdict. They weren't too far apart, whichever direction they're in,
Mhm.
and they weren't too far apart. It didn't take that much longer to get there. So we'll see if any of the jurors talk after all of this is over as well. It is 2:22 now, and we are waiting for the verdict to be announced in the Carmelo Anthony murder trial in Collin County.
That's right. The jury was able to consider manslaughter as a lesser charge. Initially, Carmelo Anthony was facing a first-degree murder charge. So now is this manslaughter or is this first degree? Manslaughter implies that this was just a reckless killing that kind of in that spur of the moment, in fear maybe of his safety, he felt that he was in danger and he decided to defend himself. That is what the defense is arguing. Murder would includes the intent. Was this intentional? Did he mean to do this? There were some people who asked the question of why did he bring a knife to a track meet? And there were some more details that were brought out about that knife.
So let me interject this. Lori Brown is in the courtroom and she is able to send out messages. And she is saying to us now that the attorneys are talking to the family members. And she believes that the attorneys are preparing the family members of, the victims' families, the defendants' families, not to react to whatever that verdict might be. Judges don't like emotional outbursts in the courtroom. And it's important that families try and contain themselves. That's not easy. It's not easy, but that's probably what's happening now. And she says Carmelo Anthony, she believes, has his head down. She can't see his face. He's looking down. You might imagine, again, as I mentioned, sweaty palms, heart is racing, breath is short, because lives are in the
Yeah,
balance.
it's a heart pounding moment and kind of in limbo, waiting to find out what the verdict is. It looks like we have someone joining us on Zoom, Russell Wilson. Russell, thank you for joining us here. We are waiting for that verdict to be announced. What do you make of the fact that the jury has been deliberated for 3 hours? So they reached a decision just before 2 o'clock. Just in your experience, I mean, what do you make of them coming to this decision fairly soon?
I think, yeah, it would be consistent with there not being much disagreement among the 12 jurors. So, it wouldn't necessarily take very long to resolve those disagreements. And so I think it was really kind of a narrow issue, if you will. There wasn't really a doubt about, who done it and how it happened or any of those types of things. And so perhaps based off of what they heard, jurors had a strong feeling one way or another. And, eventually that came to a unanimous verdict.
Russell, it's
you might
Sean.
have someone.
Let's
Go
go in on it's Sean. Let's go in on what the two narrow really questions are. Narrow questions.
Yeah, I think one of them would have been, did they believe this was murder or manslaughter? And then if they did believe that it was either one of those crimes, did they believe that it was justified? And that, viewed from the standpoint of Carmelo Anthony. And, they had throughout the trial extensive testimony regarding really an incident that took place, very quickly in a matter of seconds. And so when they're sitting there as jurors, even though they're not deliberating, they themselves are forming at least individual opinions regarding the evidence. And so the first time that you actually deliberate as a whole is in jury deliberations. But when you're sitting there through a trial and you hear testimony, it has to cause you to form an opinion or some thought one way or another. And so you're trying to keep your mind open as to things. And usually your mind is working your way through to one way or another regarding how you feel about the case. And the judge provides the law, and the law then either, affirms what your thoughts are. And so I think that was probably what was happening here. Again, in the scope of issues that cases could have, even though this is a, nationally watched case, the issues are kind of narrow.
Right. And you've talked to many of your jurors, both as a prosecutor and defense attorney. Do you find they retire to that jury room and, Russell, they kind of do a straw poll to see where they are on guilt or innocence, and then they start really deliberating and look at facts or evidence or revisit testimony from that point forward, if need be?
Right. Yeah. I think usually the first thing they do is select a four-person, and then they usually talk about that. They maybe spend time going back over the jury instructions again, which wouldn't take very long. And then if you take a straw poll or a vote and you see where people are at on issues, then you may ask a person why they felt this way or that way. And then if their recollection of events is different, or the reason that they feel one way or another is different, somebody may point out something in the law or something in the evidence that might cause the person to view it a different way. And that's kind of how deliberations proceed. And there's usually a few folks that we would characterize as followers, meaning that they, based off of their disposition, are more likely to follow a person who's firm in their belief. And so that usually, is how deliberations proceed. There's a person or persons that are firm, and then other individuals have to either be as equally firm for the verdict not to be reached, or they have to be open to a discussion. And over the course of that discussion, the firmer the person's belief is, then the more likely the verdict is going to go that person's way.
Okay, so we understand now that the jurors are being brought in, and we don't have a lot of time to go into more about the minds of jurors, but you want both firm and followers on any jury.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah.
I guess before we go to that, I mean, we're waiting to find out what the decision is. Let's talk a little bit about this trial in terms of we did get more insight in terms of why Carmelo Anthony was under the tent, that he had a friend, that it was raining, he went for cover, but the defense never explained why he brought this pocket knife. It was just a small knife, 3.5 inches, why he brought it to the track meet. Do you think that in terms of on the defense's side, was that a missed opportunity in terms of not explaining why he had that with him? Is that something that they should have gotten into, or is this a case of less is more?
I mean, I think they ultimately decided that less was more. I think their point was it was lawful to have it, and risking a violation of school policy was indifferent. When you think of a person having a knife, the knife is displayed, and jurors have to form a belief if they think that that knife can be used for other utility purposes or if it's there exclusively to be used as a weapon. So in the range of knives, if you will, one of the things is that the knife was less than 5.5 inches, which suggests that under Texas law, well, not suggest, it is actually legal to carry it there, but it suggests that it also could have other potential uses.
And of course,
so
not having the knife cleaned, leaving the dried blood on the knife lends to the mind and imagination of the jurors those other uses.
Right. I think that, they decided that regardless of the reason, it did not sound like it was for purposes of a confrontation with the person that he didn't know he was going to be into a confrontation with on that day. So I think certainly you want to try to answer every question you can,
right?
But every answer comes with risk as well. Carmelo had testified. He certainly could have been cross-examined, and it might have been an opportunity for the state to go back through in a different way the events as they unfolded from his seat. So I think they weighed that out and decided against it.
Lori Brown is telling us now that Judge Roach is on the bench and said that we are now on the record to bring in the jury, warning those in the courtroom, any outburst, a person will be held in contempt. Defense attorney Mike Howard standing with his arms on Carmelo Anthony, and they are standing now waiting for the jury to enter the jury box with the verdict.
So at any moment, we will hear what that verdict is. Again, if you are just joining us right now, the jury started deliberating at 10:52 this morning. They reached a decision a little before 2. And so we were waiting for that verdict to be announced at 2:05. It is 2:32 right now. Sometimes, these things take a while in terms of getting everybody into the courtroom, explaining the rules. Our Lori Brown telling us that any outburst, a person will be held in contempt. So just kind of, letting them know what the rules are, just so that, they have rules in place and they want people to follow, those rules.
It says here, Lori is telling us, we, the jury, find the defendant guilty of murder. That is the verdict from the jurors, according to Lori Brown, who is in the courtroom.
Okay, we're hearing that first, guilty of murder. We are finding that out.
And I think, Russell Wilson, with the brevity of this deliberation, I don't think that's a surprise to many people.
All right. So, I mean, what we know is that, they've rejected the self-defense claim. They believed that the use of deadly force in response to the shove was excessive. And that's not necessarily a surprise based off of the totality of the circumstances. So I think, that was their verdict.
Now we'll see what happens with this jury in the punishment phase.
Right. So we're probably going to see a brief break, and the parties will get a chance to gather themselves, if you will, and the judge would have to decide if he wanted to go ahead and begin the punishment phase the case, maybe in 15, 20 minutes or so, or if he wanted a break. Given that he's got the jurors sequestered, I think that they will get back started on testimony probably relatively quickly.
Let me ask you a question. You have a client who is a teenager who's a 3.8 GPA, has no bad record, has no juvenile history, has no engagement with law enforcement, has made this decision that has left him guilty of murder. How do you work in the punishment phase? What do you try to do to limit?
I mean, I think you gotta first you want to console your client and the family briefly, but you're gonna have to quickly turn to your anticipated punishment evidence, which is going to be the state again going first. You're going to hear more character information. It takes a while when you get an adverse verdict for the person to really accept and understand it. The state may be moving to have his bond held insufficient, meaning that if he walked in the courthouse today, that he won't be walking out tonight. Your client's going to have a whole lot of anxiety. You know, the range of punishments, 5 to 99 years. When you hear a guilty verdict of murder, you're certainly going to see your life flash before you because you recognize you could face imprisonment for the rest of your life. The attorney, if you get everybody calmed down, you need to start thinking of your most mitigating factors. Probably here will be age of the offender and no criminal history.
And let me ask you, while I have you, Russell, let's talk about the converse side of that. Let's talk about at the prosecution table. I have covered trials where you were the prosecutor and you secured the win in the courtroom. You got the conviction. What happens to the family of your victim in this moment? What do you say to them as the prosecutor?
You know, we're actually there's a sense of relief for them regarding the verdict being the verdict that they wanted it to be. But you're still preparing as well as the prosecutor. So you'd say, you know, brief words of comfort. The family usually experiences some degree, like I said, of relief. And then I'm probably talking to them about who our first witnesses are. Maybe I'm wanting to go get, maybe I'm bringing a mom and I want baby photos. I want the graduation that was missed. I want the life to be expanded and explained and for people to understand just what the loss was.
Maybe his twin brother now, huh? Maybe the twin brother.
I'm lining up people to to emphasize the impact of the death. And, you know, both of these young men, I think, had no known criminal history or things like that. There's no drugs involved. They're both in high school athletics. So both sides will be talking about the promise of the individual. And the state will, of course, be saying, you know, our chance to come into our promise is gone.
Right.
And, you know, the defense will be saying, you know, that, you know, the gravity of what was done is, you know, struck now in a different way.
Yes.
And they'll be getting, you know, Carmelo's parents ready as well, I think, to testify.
I just want.
Sorry,
go ahead. Go ahead.
No, that's it. I was going to say, so you're likely to hear, you know, the gut wrenching impact of death from the viewpoint of the victim and the viewpoint of the defendant. And, you know, you'll see a family. I don't know if they'll ask for a specific range or a specific number of punishment. But, you know, that's what I think is you're going to see unfold, and that's what we see unfold in punishment hearings on murder cases all the time.
How about the jurors now, too? I want to stay with what's going to happen in that courtroom because this is where we are now.
Right. Some of the jurors, it will depend. Some of the testimony was emotional. In very, very emotional cases, the jurors themselves still aren't going to be free to talk with anybody or anything like that. So I think they would need to remain relatively composed, and they have to still address what the punishment is. And there will be, perhaps broader disagreement on how you punish this crime.
Mm-hmm.
So if you've got a universal agreement on, and then you have laws, when it comes to how you set punishment, the jury instructions are very broad. It just basically says you can consider the person's background and nature, but what makes a person say a life sentence versus what makes a person say a lower number, and how firmly they feel about any of these things. The jury instructions and punishment will advise jurors that it's an aggravated offense, meaning that any sentence that's imposed, that he would not be eligible for parole until at least one half of that sentence is served.
Correct.
And so jurors sometimes, although they'll instruct it not to, may say, if we impose a 20-year sentence, then he could not get out until 10 years. And you may have the prosecution, saying, that Austin would have lived until, into his 70s. And that's what we've lost. And so you're going to have those arguments shaped, I think, real time. And a lot of jurors will often say that it's more difficult to decide the correct punishment in a case. And these are tougher areas for the lawyers as well. There's not, it's very low chance that a case gets reversed because the number is wrong, if you will. So you can't, if 20 can be right, 5 can be right, and 55 can be right.
Mm-hmm.
It's really all up to the jury. And so, the defense needs to attempt to put pressure on the jury, if you will, regarding the gravity of that. And the same with the state.
Right, because you wouldn't expect the state to suggest 10 or 20 years.
No, absolutely not. I don't think that they would suggest that. I think that they would suggest much more significant punishment numbers.
Mm-hmm.
This kind of gets into what we would see in the way of what we're going to hear in punishment. So without knowing what evidence they intend to put on, if it's just what I would call the emotional impact evidence, but they could get into, there may have been some scientific testing done, more information about Carmelo, maybe more about his background, and that, maybe more questions, more answers as to what would have happened in his life that would have caused him to appear with a knife at the track meet this day. So those are all possibilities.
We're just getting an update from Lori Brown in real time. She is saying that the jury has left for a break. The sentencing phase is going to start next. So if anybody leaves the courtroom, they will not be allowed back inside. Russell Wilson, thank you so much for your insight. We do want to see what is going on outside of the Collin County Courthouse. So our Alex Boyer has been out there since this morning. So Alex, if you can hear me, just explain what you're seeing, what you're hearing, what is going on around you now that the verdict has been announced.
Sure, Eden. So, and Sean, I have to say, I was really surprised to hear the kind of lack of verbal reaction or kind of loud reaction when people here in the crowd learned that Carmelo Anthony was found guilty of murder. There was a crowd gathered in the front, as you had seen a short time ago and have been seen from our different camera angles, kind of gathered listening for those first words. They heard the guilty verdict. Many kind of moaned. And then the crowd has been like you're seeing it now. It's been interesting to watch from where I'm standing. I have not been able to follow the crowd as closely as some of our photographers. I can tell you that my colleague Amelia Jones is also kind of with the crowd, so she'll have more of that perspective as well. But the crowd has been very calm, some minor outbursts, and then they've been kind of following in like a group to one side of the courthouse to the other as my photographer John pans across our tent here and the trees. It's a little difficult to see, but then that is kind of where the bulk of the crowd is starting to move. So officers remain on the other side of the barrier that I mentioned that's separating the parking lot from the steps of the courthouse. Most people here seemingly seem to be taking those orders from officers into account and staying on this side of the barrier. But again, emotions differing to some degree, but no outright loud emotion. There was one moment where I did see a woman on the ground. I think you're maybe watching that now. If I can see from our screen here, some people sitting on the ground kind of reacting to it that way. Folks were kind of following that person's lead and kind of saying, I heard somebody say, stick together, let's all stay together. And that seems to be the sentiment out here. But all in all, relatively calm. Still a very large police force, as you might expect, out here keeping an eye on things. I have noticed a couple of additional law enforcement trucks, vehicles, constable vehicles that are in the distance there arriving, kind of creating more of a barrier separating the crowd from the entrance of the courthouse. But that is really what we are seeing right now, keeping an eye on the developments outside. Certainly a packed scene, though, as I mentioned earlier. I would say between kind of the scattered people across the parking lot and the group that has remained up front, easily a couple of hundred people are here. They were waiting to learn the fate of Carmelo Anthony, and now they know.
And we watched in real time as a woman was on the ground being consoled, visibly shaken by that verdict there.
Yeah, there is in the same space today, Alex Boyer, joy and pain, you would agree with those folk outside the Collin County Courthouse.
Oh, absolutely. You know, from day one, when I was here last Monday at the beginning of the jury selection process, keep in mind that there were some 600 potential jurors that were brought here. That was a massive number, larger than most high-profile case, because the judge said from the beginning that he was going to get this right, and both sides ending up with the panel that they chose. Again, as we knew early on when the jury was sat, there were no African Americans on this panel, but still several minorities on this panel that decided his fate. As you mentioned, though, Sean, certainly, of course, we have supporters for the Metcalf family, supporters for the Anthony family, and then just people in general who have really followed this case from the beginning, since it was such a high-profile tragedy from the get-go happening here in North Texas, involving these two young men, both 17 years old at the time, Carmelo Anthony 19 now. So, of course, lots of focus, eyes, and attention leading up to when everything began last Monday. As the week progressed and as both sides started to present their case, it would ebb and flow with the groups that we would see here. Some groups louder than others. But then at the same time, we were also seeing people here that were very neutral, people that just wanted to come and pray with others and be someone that they could lend an ear to. I can tell you one day there was a pastor who was sitting out here, a non-denominational pastor who was here, and he was sitting down in a folding chair and offering free hugs and an ear. And I can tell you that certainly many people took him up on that. No doubt a lot of people are going to want to decompress and offload what they're learning today.
Yeah, and you talk about the many people, the supporters, but then you talk about those who weren't in either camp, people who wanted to see what justice would look like in this particular trial. And so they've seen it. They've seen it play out. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, no, absolutely. To your point, Sean, for many people, this was the first time they've ever come to a trial. And as you know, Sean, covering many yourself and Eden as well, what these trials are like. But for the average citizen and resident, this isn't something they experience every day. And this, of course, was a very, very emotionally charged, high profile case that drew a lot of opinion and feelings on either side, or as you mentioned, many folks just feeling bad, calling this a tragedy, which of course it was in and of itself. And then again, a lot of them coming today to the courthouse, wanting to be here in person for what you could argue, of course, is a moment in history, a sad history, of course, in terms of the gravity of the situation, justice being served by this jury, no matter what, how you feel about it on either side.
Absolutely. And that jury now, according to Lori Brown, is back in the courtroom. The punishment phase is underway. They have waived opening statements and are going straight to witnesses. One of the things that the judge said last week, if you remember, Alex, is that we're going to be done by Friday, June 12th. That was his goal. And at this rate, well, certainly now the verdict's returned. At this rate, they'll be done with punishment before the weekend.
Oh, absolutely. I think, many of my colleagues here that we've been speaking with from other outlets who have been covering this from day one, we certainly knew that the judge wanted a tight timeline. He said from day one that he was going to go from 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. every day. He stuck to that. And in fact, he held testimony all day on Saturday. I was here for that as well. He went from 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. And that was when the prosecution rested. Midday or about 3 p.m. on Saturday is when the prosecution rested. We were surprised because we knew that there was 35 witnesses that were expected to testify. They ended up resting after the medical examiner having only called 21. But obviously they felt like they made their case. And based on what the verdict was today, they did in their eyes. So you're right. The judge saying that he wanted to have this wrapped up by this coming Friday. Again, here we now find ourselves in the sentencing phase, just shy of 3 o'clock on this day.
Right. And of course, it's not uncommon to have more names on your witness list than you actually call at any trial. Once you feel like you've made your point, once you feel like you've closed the circle, if you will, and nailed it down, that's when you stop, because you don't want to overwhelm your jurors. That's when you stop. And clearly the defense thought a half dozen witnesses, we've made our point. All we need is to create this reasonable doubt. That doubt was not created on the question of murder.
And it looks like we are hearing from Carmelo Anthony's mother. I believe she has taken the stand. So she is saying that she was asked, do you believe he regrets it? She says, yes, I know my son. He is very sorry for what he did. Please have mercy on my son. And then she was asked, like any mother's, you love your son. She says, yes, regardless of what happens, you realize he will still get to be part of your life. Yes. So again, she is asking, for this punishment phase for the jury, for everybody to consider that he is remorseful, which also was expressed during testimony early on, that he did not deny that he did this. And another witness said he was just Anthony was distraught over what happened, that he was emotionally visible moments after all of this took place. And so we are hearing from his mother right now.
It looks like Lori Brown is reporting that Karmelo Anthony's mother is the only witness the defense plans to call in the punishment phase. And no one can ask you to have mercy for the life of another person like a mother.
Yeah.
She's pouring everything she has into this plea. She's literally begging people at this moment to give her son a chance at life at some point in the future.
And again, he's looking at 5 years to 99 years in prison. So we will see what is decided. Lori is saying that the jury is out. They can't deliberate until they get the charge. So we'll see.
So this is another little surprise. I think we all thought there would be more testimony in the punishment phase. I anticipated that we might now hear from Hunter Metcalf about the loss of his twin brother. Not only were they twins, they were best friends. Thought we might would hear from him. Thought we might would hear more about who Carmelo Anthony is and the life that he could have rehabilitated. I thought we might hear more of that, but only hearing from his mother now in the punishment phase. And so the jury could come back today once they get the charge. They have to get the charge, which will tell them, here's the range of punishment. Here's what you can do now.
And I think because, Metcalf's brother Hunter did not testify before the jury reached its verdict, and because we did not hear from Carmelo Anthony's mother before all this, we thought perhaps, both sides were saving these family members for this stage of this case. And it looks like, they decided we're just going to hear from one person and we're going to move along, which is really how it feels like the whole trial has been. I mean, they've been on a tight schedule.
Yes, it has moved along. And, there were some folks out loud questioning, should a trial of this gravity go so fast? Who were supporters of both sides. It wasn't just one side saying that. People were concerned about the pacing and whether there was pressure on the jurors from the very beginning, knowing that we're going to be done by the 12th, you're going to be sequestered. Was that unfair pressure? But the jurors, from what we know, based on what our reporters in the courtroom have said to us, they seem to handle the pressure in the moment extremely well.
And court is in recess right now. So we'll see. Again, Carmelo Anthony is looking at 5 years to 99 years in prison. He was 17 years old when all of this took place. Important to also note that, both Austin Metcalf and Carmelo Anthony were teenagers at the time of all this. They were 17. But because the state of Texas treats 17-year-olds as adults in the criminal justice system, that is why Carmelo Anthony is being tried as an adult. And so we found out not long ago that he was found guilty of murder, which was also interesting because, again, earlier this morning, the manslaughter charge was on the table as well for the jury to consider, and they decided to still go with that first-degree murder.
Now, it's not uncommon for a lesser included, as it's called, charge to be added at the time that juries began deliberation. The defense wanted criminal negligent homicide included in place of manslaughter, to which the judge said no. That would carry even a lesser sentence. So none of that is a surprise, really. His bond will be held insufficient. It is very, very rare that you are found guilty of murder and you're able to go home from the courtroom. So I would anticipate him going into custody today. But at the rate they're going, with the jury on recess now, with the charge being prepared, before 6 o'clock tonight, we could very well have punishment handed down and for Carmelo Anthony, and he would be in the control of the Collin County Sheriff's Department until which time the Texas Department of the prison system, they come and get him and take him to a prison farm where he would begin.
And he's looking at quite a range, like we said, 5 years to 99 years in prison. Maybe the jury will consider the fact that he does not have a criminal history outside of this, that, both of these students did well academically, that he did well academically. He did not have any other history of committing any other crimes. So I think the question here, too, is, which side of the spectrum are we looking at? Amelia Jones has also been covering this as part of our night side shift. She's been covering this trial. Amelia, can you just set the scene? Just tell us, where exactly are you? What are you seeing? What are you hearing from your sources? Just kind of fill us in on what's going on.
Absolutely, Eden and Sean. I'm just here on the sidewalk, just right outside the Collin County Courthouse. You can see the line of law enforcement behind me. They have not approached the crowd at all. They are staying right beyond the perimeter here, but obviously making their presence known. Now, I haven't personally seen any clashes between groups of supporters here. We've mainly seen people kind of gather in collective groups and then kind of share their thoughts or, any chants with each other. We know that this case is just taken on a life of its own, for a lack of a better phrase, on social media. So there are a lot of people that are live streaming right now on the various social media platforms. We also hear people on a loudspeaker. There's a speaker that was playing gospel music. As you heard Alex share earlier, there were some prayer circles and gospel words and songs that were shared before the verdict was reached. I did get a chance to speak to one man who told me that he does not know either party. He was not in the courtroom for any of the testimony. He came out today to just see what justice would look like here and what the jury would decide. And he told me there is no winning on either side. He said, obviously, the Metcalf family have lost their son. Nothing can bring Austin Metcalf back. And then on the other side, Karmelo Anthony will now be taken away from his family. And the jury is deciding right now what that sentence will look like. And so I will say, when the verdict was first announced and the word and the decision was kind of spreading through the crowd, there was a lot of unhappiness, especially in the crowd and group of people where I was. We know that Carmelo Anthony supporters have worn purple, and there was a lot of purple out here. And a lot of people, they did not hide their unhappiness with that verdict, but they have remained here. And again, kind of gathering with each other, sharing some of their thoughts with the media. We also see some supporters. Someone behind the camera right here has a Justice for Austin sign. And I know my photographer, Andy, was able to speak with him. And so we are getting reaction from both sides out here. But so far, things have remained pretty calm. Again, there's been no physical confrontations, no clashes, at least that I've seen from my perspective, but you do see the law enforcement presence. And also, before that verdict was read, I could see law enforcement right up against the doors of the Collin County Courthouse, seemingly just in case anyone was going to run up those courthouse steps and potentially try to rush in. So they were really prepared here for this, but no law enforcement has come in contact with the crowd. They are really keeping their distance, keeping their eyes peeled. But so far, things have remained peaceful, but the crowds have not died down at all. With that, I'll send it back to you guys. That's what I'm seeing out here live.
Thank you. And again, excellent work covering this trial where our politicians are now weighing in. And, typically you don't see politicians weighing in on local murder trials. You don't bring politics into this mix, but that's what we're seeing happen. State Representative Jared Patterson posting a statement on the murder conviction of Austin Metcalf's killer. There it is, as you can see it. It reads in part that the murder of Austin Metcalf was a senseless and heartbreaking tragedy that forever changed the lives of his family, friends, and community. All of that is true. Nothing can restore the life that was taken or ease the unimaginable pain of losing a child. Today's outcome of a murder conviction is justice served. And then Jeff Leach also posting on social media, on X, Carmelo Anthony guilty of murdering Austin Metcalf, the right decision, justice delivered. And so it is, I believe you said earlier, or may have been Alex who talked about this being historic. It is a sad and historic case that will always be talked about, reviewed, and looked at here in North Texas.
Absolutely. And, since we've been covering this trial, obviously no cameras were allowed in the courtroom. And so we've been relying heavily on our crew. Our Lori Brown is inside of the courtroom. And so she explained, she was describing what was going on as Carmelo Anthony's mother took the stand, and she just added, just kind of painting the picture of what's going on inside. And she said the mother's statements were tearful, that she was emotional. She was telling the jury to really, have mercy for her son. And so that also paints the picture of just how distraught she is. And so I think you had mentioned this on both sides, right? So there's one side that is very emotional and another side that feels this was the right call, that this murder charge, this murder conviction rather, was what Carmelo Anthony deserved.
And I have to tell you, Lori Brown and Alex Boyer took us into that courtroom every single day. They were the eyes and ears of viewers here in North Texas, capturing the moments that mattered the most during the hours of testimony in that courtroom. Judges have their own discretion about whether to have cameras in the courts or not at the state level. And Collin County has limited media access, not just this trial. There have been others that have been high profile. They sometimes allowed cameras, sometimes not. Not with the same. Every judge has their own discretion. Many feel like cameras should have been in the courtroom because of the gravity of this case, both sides so divided. At any rate, Alex and Lori did a wonderful job capturing the testimony and bringing that to us.
Absolutely. So we're going to wrap up here on air, but we're going to continue our coverage over on Fox Local. So if you want to stream along with us, be sure to download the Fox Local app, and we're going to continue to monitor what's going on outside of the courtroom, the courthouse, and also what's going on inside of the courtroom.
And welcome back, my friends. We are in continuing coverage in the digital studio. Sean Rabb here along with Eden Chuckle as we talk now about the Carmelo Anthony guilty verdict, Eden, and wait to find out the punishment. Russell Wilson, attorney Russell Wilson is back with us. Russell, thank you for your insights today and walking through us the legal machinations here. Question, are you surprised there was only one witness in the punishment phase, that being the mother?
Yes, that is a bit of a surprise. That usually can only happen with some type of agreement among the parties, whether formal or informal.
Okay.
So normally we would see the state put on, if you will, their punishment case. And so to hear that the first and only witness, if I'm understanding this correctly, was Carmelo's mom, I think would mean that the state views themselves as having presented a very strong case for a very harsh punishment. And it would also mean that the defense has believes they've presented their best mitigating or reasons to seek lower punishment, that they believe they've presented that as well. So I think you mentioned earlier, but yeah, I think if that is the case, that the only witness we hear from is his mom, Carmelo Anthony's mom, then I think that it's a fair chance we would have a final verdict
soon.
Yes, yeah, very soon. I'm mindful, as I mentioned earlier, of the sequestration issue, and I think you guys were mentioning that whether or not the case was tried at a fast pace or not. But I do think when you tell people they're going to be sequestered, it's just more likely that they're going to make a decision faster.
Mm-hmm.
And it may have been, to prevent exposure to social media or other things outside of the control of the courthouse. But I think that same principle will hold true in a punishment phase as well.
Sure.
And so if the judge was saying he's going until 6 every day and we're at 3:15, and jury just, if they're on a break, then the only other thing to do would be to prepare the punishment charge. I talked about that a little bit earlier. And again, that's a much shorter charge than the actual jury charge, and the jurors are given a space where they have to fill in a line.
Right.
They fill in a number of years between 5 and 99, and they can enter a fine up to $10,000. But given the brevity of punishment, I'm expecting both sides to argue for the polar opposite ends of punishment.
Exactly.
And Russell, I know every trial is different, every case is different, but I think we're all kind of shocked that we're only hearing from Carmelo Anthony's mom. So typically, how many people would you have normally expected to at least hear from?
In a normal, usually you may have at least 5 or 6 relatives. Again, I mentioned certainly the possibility of testing. I mean, you pointed out we already know or appear to know he's a 3.7 GPA student. You'd hear this kind of from both sides. The attorney for the defense, Mike, he started out and he was saying a brother or son. So even in the punishment phase, you want to try to bring some of these notions back. The scope of admissibility is broader, and so there may be additional evidence that you want to put in. You could have strangers. Both of these young men, by being in athletics, may have encountered strangers, community service events, but other good, in essence, good acts of character that might cause a person to see you in a bit of a different light.
Well, let me ask you this.
So
Let me interrupt.
yeah,
I'm
go
sorry to
ahead.
interrupt, but when you said only having one witness portends the possibility that there's already some kind of agreement, can you talk about, Russell Wilson, what that could be? Because in my mind, Bill Worsey's going to start out at 40 years or higher when he goes to this jury.
Right. And when I say some type of agreement, I don't mean to suggest there's an agreement on the number.
Okay.
But it may be, look, we have 10 people that can say he's a great person. And we say we've got 10 that'll say he's a bad person.
Okay.
We're just going to skip putting our 10 on and you skip your 10. And we're both going to argue what we have to say.
I see.
Something along those lines.
Got you.
Could be like an informal agreement that I'm going to forego putting on something. And I think it's reasonable to think that Bill Worski would start at a 40-year type sentence. I think you're going to hear him appeal to community safety. You're gonna hear him say, a message to the community regarding this type of conduct. I think he'll come back to saying that the case is not about race, but maybe about safety in the community. And then you're going to hear Mike Howard or Toby Shook come in and then, perhaps bring from any of us that can think back to when we were 17 years old and list off a number of terrible decisions that were made, but later on turned out to be okay people, and try to view it from that perspective. And so I think those two things are going to get ready to clash, perhaps just in a closing argument.
Yes.
That may be more contentious than the guilt innocence phase, if you will.
Right. And your appeal to jurors in this moment, as a lawyer, as a defense attorney or prosecutor, your appeal is often more intense than it is in the guilt or innocence phase, because you are on one hand praying and begging, pleading with jurors to give this person a lesser sentence, that they might have a chance at life. And yet on the other hand, you're saying, I don't care that he's a good kid and 18, he took a life and now he must pay that price.
Right. Yeah. This part of lawyering is much more, you've got to tap into a humanistic side. This isn't about rules of evidence. This isn't about rules of procedure. This is really about being a member of community and understanding and trying to strike a chord that your potential jurors will identify with. So you may have talked with them, or your sitting jurors would identify with. So you should have talked with them in voir dire about punishment in general, based off of this case, the apparent status of it. If you were the defense, it might have been useful to talk about that a little bit more, since you were in essence going to be admitting to causing the death of a person. And so, maybe you're going back through your notes, you're looking at what types of things matter to them. You're thinking of which jurors have kids that are teenagers themselves. And so you're trying to find not a law thing that you can connect with them on, but a commonality ground. And so a mom obviously does that. Many moms worry about their children every day when they go out the door. You worry about them when you're teaching them to drive. You worry about them when you send them off to college. And so, that's the identification, the commonality, where in the same, many parents' biggest fear is to have the death of their child before their own death. And so when I say there's a collision, it's these concepts coexist in this, this huge range of punishment from 5 to 99 years.
Yeah.
And so the jurors are trying to balance and circle all of that together in a way that reaches what we will consider, as a fair result. And that's, I think, a tough thing to do.
And gut-wrenching for jurors.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. There's not going to be a law and a boxes that you check. And it really comes down to your own conscience on a given day. And some people can be what we would call more of the high end of punishment. You know, some people, an eye for an eye. We've heard that before. Other folks could be, again, that a person that young, you know, that irreparable damage has been done. And no matter what the prison sentence is, a family will have lost a loved one no matter what. So it's a much tougher deliberation than the guilt innocence, because there's, again, no clear wrong or right answers. You don't have those guide rails. You know,
Right.
Murder is intentionally, knowingly causing the death of a person. Was this a murder or committing an act clearly dangerous to human life? If those qualify, then jurors are really just checking those boxes. But what do you do about that now that you have that? There's not a guideline, and that's a unique thing about Texas criminal law. We're one of the few states that does have punishment by the jury.
Yes, absolutely.
I just wanted to ask, I mean, Sean had mentioned this earlier in terms of this is certainly a case, a trial that will be remembered here in Texas, one that we will probably refer to for years to come, even considering that it got national attention. As you kind of, as we dissect and kind of look back on this trial, was there anything in particular that stood out to you in terms of how prosecutors handled it, in terms of how the defense went about it? Did anything catch your attention?
You know, not necessarily, and I don't say that, I guess, maybe in a bad way, but I think this case in particular received, you know, lots of attention, but a lot of the methodology that was actually employed to try the case was common to cases that just did not receive this much attention. And so there wasn't necessarily anything that was particularly surprising. A lot of the measures that were put in place to try to protect, if you will, the trial, I think were, you know, those were the things that were unique about it. But unfortunately, there's, you know, lots of homicides across the state, and there's murder trials almost every week. And so, you know, there wasn't something that just stood out, you know, like that. Maybe the court on Saturday, which is rare.
Well, we've had court on Saturday, even here in Dallas County. It's been infrequent. And Russell, we're joined now by Clarice Tinsley. Good to see you, Clarice.
You as well, Sean.
It's been infrequent that we've had Saturday court. Maybe the Amber Geiger trial we had Saturday court.
Mm-hmm.
I covered that. You are right. There were no facts, there were no circumstances here that are different from many of the murder trials that take place every day across Dallas County, Harris County, Travis County, Bexar County, Collin County. This was unique in not only what happened, where it happened, when it happened, and in the moments immediately after. Within an hour or 2 hours after it happened, the father of Austin Metcalf is on TV. Within an hour after that, the mother was on. They're sharing their pain. It's raw. The family's there. They're on national news the same night. That usually doesn't happen with a homicide victim so quickly. We get to the families, but not within hours after.
Right. The social media current was powerful. And I mean, that's what we're still witnessing today. And, you know, the racial undertones that came out as well. So when I'm saying not unique, I think just in the core facts, but the amount of division, the amount of views, the conversations it sparked, those are the things that are going to continue to make it a national discussion, and that's why it will be remembered.
Russell,
is for what it caused in that regard. Yes, ma'am.
And Russell, the fact that the last three members of the jury pool, the three women who were Black, who were teachers, no Black juror, no African-American juror on the panel. And the fact that those three women were removed or disqualified. What is your reaction to that? And is that something do you think might be used on appeal?
It's most certainly is going to go up on appeal. It continues to be a disputed issue. Without having heard the entirety of the voir dire, I think if the state's pro for a reason, they say, "Hey, we're striking them because they're teachers." I think many people will disbelieve that, and so I don't know, whether or not that'll ever be accurately answered. People are going to always have their opinion on it. As far as the law, I think the law does allow striking for race neutral reasons. So that issue, there's actually a case recently at the Supreme Court that was reversed on racial discrimination in jury selection. So that's going to be an issue that goes up through the courts, and I can't say for sure how that will turn out. I don't know, but I think
Which is
if
why,
you were
though,
appealing the case,
there will
as
be
one
some
that you
people behind this case who argues justice is not blind for that very reason.
and yes, there will be, and it's understandable that there will be. There's certainly studies regarding disparities between black and white defendants and black and white jurors, things along those lines, and so those arguments will be made, and that's kind of one of the ongoing discussions in our country, or certainly in our city and county, is when race matters and when it doesn't.
Mhm.
So the flip side, they will say, that any person, regardless of their color, in these circumstances, if you were to say both people were the same color or a different color, the law would say, can you defend yourself in this manner or not? And so there's that issue to try to balance with. And the other issue, is certainly probably the argument, or there's the argument that, well, if a person of color, if there was a black juror on there, does that suggest that they would have seen it less criminal or not? And so the discussion, our verdict still would have had to come from 12 people.
Sure.
Would have had to have been a unanimous verdict. We generally think of teachers as being mediators among disputes in schools, and being able to see both sides of it. So it may have been, that for whatever reason, the state may have decided that wasn't the best type of juror for this type of case.
I guess
And
that's what surprised me, Russell and Sean, because when you do think of teachers, you think of the profession, you think of someone who's going to weigh different sides of an issue, someone who would be neutral and look at the information. I mean, really look at the evidence that would be provided and deal with it on a intellectual or a non-emotional way. And I guess I just was surprised that the teachers, that would have been a profession that they would not have wanted to be on the panel.
perhaps there's, and Russell can speak to this better than me, but perhaps there's the idea that they might be overly sympathetic to a young person, race notwithstanding.
Right. And I think that, but and I don't currently know the occupations of the other jurors. But if your strikes are among a conservative rancher who's let's say he has some cattle in North Collin County, and I have a teacher, I may choose to strike the teacher in favor of the rancher because I feel like the rancher may be less compassionate than the teacher. And so it's also a little bit of a relativity type thing. Or if I have a person who does what we call hard sciences, engineers, well, they may be less compassionate in their analytics. And so, you know, I think that would come into play as well. You know, and so that's going to be discussed. And certainly the attorneys for the state had to know that that would be discussed. And there'll be people that will always view that, you know, they'll say, hey, yeah, no, they struck them because of their race. And you know, that we'll never know what the answers, you know, will be on those questions. We'll know what the answers we got in court, what the ruling was, but certainly, you know, we also know what the evidence was in the case.
In case you are just now joining us on our digital platforms, Karmelo Anthony found guilty of murder in the trial for the murder of young Mr. Metcalf, Austin Metcalf, and the jury now deliberating punishment. They will decide. They will decide the punishment. But they still might be in recess.
I think we're still waiting for them to do closing arguments.
They're still in recess. I guess they haven't gotten the charge yet.
Right.
And
right.
closing arguments.
Yeah, I think we're going to hear, or we won't be able to actually hear it, but yeah, I think we'll get closing arguments and then the deliberation.
Yes.
Given the way that this is rolling, I'm assuming that he's not going to give much time for closing arguments.
I would guess not. Maybe a half hour or less, you think?
I was thinking 15 minutes aside, but maybe. I mean, if there's an intention to give an opportunity to be done today,
okay,
and today ends at 6, then I think, and you assume at least an hour or more of deliberation. But if not, I mean, the other thing is the jury could also ask not to be sequestered, but just extend their deliberations into the evening. So,
the case,
I think,
Wilson,
yeah.
Have you had a case where the punishment phase deliberation was longer than the guilt or innocent phase?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, we have. We've had, yes, you know, we've had, I can recall some cases, literally, the jurors were out, you know, for days on punishment. Again, that wide range, and a relatively youthful person who's convicted. You know, most people that make it onto the jury don't necessarily show up wanting to give a person a harsh sentence. You know, if you wake up on a given day, do you wake up wishing bad for somebody? And so that isn't necessarily easily achieved. Again, you know, if we know more about the jurors here, we could, you know, we might be able to read something from the speed with which they reached the murder guilty verdict. And again, you know, some of their backgrounds, I think some of them, from the descriptions I've understood, tend to be from more conservative professional sectors, which may suggest that they would tend to sentence higher on a punishment case.
Well, Russell and Sean, we're getting some reporting from Lori Brown, who's been covering this trial. She says that Judge Roach is back, but family is not in the courtroom. The judge, she said, just came and shook all the reporters' hands and thanked us for following the rules. Attorneys and the judge are working on the jury charge for the punishment phase. In light of the verdict, she says, this is my take on the key moments from closing statements. Prosecution gave 4 reasons self-defense does not apply. 1, provoke. Anthony provoked the encounter. 2, force disparity. You can't meet a shove with a stab. You can meet a shove with a shove or deadly force with deadly force. Number 3, reasonable belief from Worski. A reasonable person would not have plunged a knife into Austin Metcalf. Number 4, immediately necessary. Deadly force must be immediately necessary. Worski argued there was not immediate necessity to plunge a knife into an unarmed man. In addition, in Texas, a person who does not need to intend to kill someone for it to still be murder. If someone intended to cause serious bodily injury, that is murder according to jury instructions.
Yeah, no, I would tend to agree with those.
So as you prepare your closing statements now before this jury, let's first talk about the defense. He's guilty, okay, of murder. What do you say now in this moment? There's really no need to talk about.
But I think you, depending on what your demeanor was during voir dire, I mean, I think you thank them for their time and their service, and you get right down to your issue. And I was saying, I don't know that you need 30 minutes to give the mitigation case for Karmelo Anthony, nor do I think you necessarily need 30 minutes to give the punishment case for Austin Metcalf. You should be about getting to it. It's later in the day. There's a certain amount of juror fatigue. I don't know if you've been in courtrooms during the morning time. There's a more energy just as the day goes on.
Yes.
As you get up to witness 20, and so you want to be able to keep attention, and you don't do that by having something that, in my view, is long-winded. But you've got to be, precise here. And so, and you've got things that you want to cover. Given the limited number of witnesses, there's not going to be necessarily new punishment stuff.
Right.
And so, again, I think it's hard to, you're really just rehashing from the existing evidence, mitigating things, with age, youth, and lack of criminal history being the main ones. And for the prosecution, they're going to be age, youth, and, a future of promise.
Let me bring something up that's way outside of the courtroom right now, Russell Wilson. Earlier, I mentioned that State Rep Patterson, Jerry Patterson, and Jeff Leach had put out these statements on social media. Now, Abraham George, the chairman of the state Republican Party, is doing the same thing. I've never, in my many years, seen elected officials weigh in a local murder trial. These political voices sending these kinds of messages. I don't know if that's more divisive to the entire community or what. Do you have any thoughts on that? It may not be something you want to talk about, but.
No, I think, the reality, I think, it's fair to say our today's politics are more divisive than they were, let's say, 10 or 15 years ago. And there's a lot of things that have changed. There's social media. But one of the things that politicians certainly are aware of is that they're judged oftentimes perhaps on one or two acts, very few acts. And it could be what you did or said after the Austin Metcalf verdict or the position certainly could impact it. So it changes trajectories, if you will. And I don't know that I think it's a good or bad thing. I think societal involvement in our criminal justice system is good. But, I don't know, for example, when politicians come out and praise one verdict and then condemn another, if that promotes respect for our jury system or not.
That's my point.
Yeah. So I'm not so sure, that I would go to that. But I think that they do that because there's at least an impression that their constituents you know, if I'm in your district and I'm voting for you and you didn't say anything on this or that, then maybe I'd have, the believe the ones that you have mentioned are more conservative. It seems like those are Republican, and there may have been more conservative support groups that they might feel like they would have lost their support by not saying something. And so it's easy to put together a message, put it out on Twitter or TikTok, or issue a statement. And so that's what I think I think we'll see that going forward.
And everything should not be colored with politics.
So Russell, the jury got the case, started deliberating today at 10:52. They came back with a verdict a little bit after 1:30. It is now 3:42. And do you still see that all of this will end today, that it will wrap up today?
Yes, I guess. If you let me, once we know what time they start reading the charge and how much time he gives for closing arguments, but more likely than not, again, the jurors have some idea in their mind, and when they go into deliberations, there's going to be a debate regarding the number. And somebody may say, well, I could never agree to that. So I do think it may go relatively quickly. And in order for it not to do that, somebody has to feel very strongly about a particular position that they will not change no matter what. And I don't know, as I understand this group of jurors, and again, taken from that initial verdict, that type of division would be among this group of 12 citizens. So those are the things that are indicating to me that this could still be quick. That doesn't necessarily mean that there's not some weight assigned to the things we've talked about that are plus and minus. Mm-hmm. It's just that number may be assigned, considered. You could tell somebody, hey, if it's a 17-year-old kid and I think 20 years is good, somebody else could say, no, 40 is fine with me. Do those people then say, well, let's meet in the middle at XYZ 30? It certainly could happen. Because remember, they don't have a true basis. There's no guide rail to tell you why 28 is better than 32, or you don't have a way to distinguish the differences in the numbers. And you certainly don't have a way to tell somebody that their number is wrong, at least, and you may have some people that go in and say, no, I don't care, a life for a life. I want to see him get a life sentence. And, if you have enough people that view it like that, then that certainly is what could happen. But, we know that they're, were able to reach agreement relatively quickly on, no as to manslaughter in the range between murder, and no as to self-defense. But they had guide rails for that, and that's what allowed Bill Werski, to be able to hit those 4 points relatively quickly.
Right.
Because what he's saying is lining up, kind of with the jury instructions. And so it's not much of a debate, if you will. But on this issue, there's more latitude. But so yeah, I think if they start by 4, what they're reading the instructions, I think that they would choose to continue to deliberate as opposed to having to go home, be under guard, not being able to call your family, overnight, being in a hotel room, perhaps with no TV, and provided, neutral reading materials, if you will, and having to wake up, get on a bus because you're sequestered, come back to the Collin County Court for the sole purpose of continuing the deliberation. I think a lot of people in that boat will choose to try to finish.
Looking at a very large police presence outside of the Collin County Courthouse, certainly a very charged atmosphere, lots of reactions to the verdict today. But in terms of the crowd and the people who were there, the spectators, lots of conversation, lots of discussion, sometimes heated,
yes,
but
peaceful.
very peaceful, yeah. And we've seen people for and against who are holding up the signs, who are doing the protest, supporting it or speaking out against it. But Sean, no violence.
No, and that's what it should be.
Yeah.
That's what our First Amendment, that should happen. That should happen. We should let our passions be known and express ourselves, but without assaulting one another.
Right.
Let me ask you real quick, Russell. I'm not sure on this, but in deciding punishment, is the jury required to be unanimous, or it's not unanimous for punishment?
No, it has to be unanimous as well.
Okay.
So you've got to have an agreement of all 12.
Okay.
So
Standard prison sentence. Okay. I wasn't sure on
Right.
that part.
and very rarely have there been juries that have hung on the punishment issue.
Okay.
But yeah, it's got to be unanimous. Again, they never have to explain their decision. If their identities have been, relatively sheltered, then they can render their verdict and go back to their lives. Some of them, I'm sure, though, I would not be surprised, will speak and say,
Well, the families
how
are now
they
back in the
voted.
courtroom, Clarice.
Yeah, Lori Brown's just reporting that both of the families are now back in, Russell. So it looks like things are going to start to continue to move forward for the next phase.
And maybe to your timeline, Russell Wilson, maybe
Yeah.
by 6 o'clock today, or they might stay later if they're in the throes of weighing the punishment at that moment. We're gonna take a break.
I would be, that's just the guess based off of experience, but you rarely have jurors that look forward to sequestration.
Right.
That's true.
So I think if we start by 4, particularly if we're just doing closing arguments, if there's 15 minutes aside, you'll probably see the prosecution will pass again, or be an argument about who goes first and who goes last. But if the state goes last, they'll let the defense go, and then they'll have sufficient time to have those discussions. And particularly, they don't have really much new evidence, right? It certainly wouldn't have been a surprise that his mom would say, save my son's life. And so that'll be, probably another discussion as well.
Yes.
Well, Russell, it's 10 minutes to 4. We're going to take a brief break and we're going to continue our coverage right after this.
All right.
Okay. Another little break.
A little wrap, and then we'll take
Okay, because at 4 o'clock, Clarice, we're gonna have to switch to IFB on our phone.
Oh,
This IFB, we won't be able
oh
to
yeah,
hear.
that's right.
So whatever your IFB number is for live shots away from the building.
I don't have that.
Okay. Clarice, I'll put you in mind. 6. Thank you, man. We're going to get ready for the 4 o'clock newscast. Russell, thank you so much, Frat. All right. Talk to you soon.
Bye-bye, Russell.
Talk with y'all as always. All right. See y'all later.
See you then,
All right.
man. Thank you.
All right. Bye.
So we need to get Clarice's IFB. Oh, okay. Okay. All right. Okay. Well, I have my phone for my IFB when it's time.
So for us here, we'll have 3 minutes.
Okay.
Back what all we've seen.
Okay.
We'll toss to more coverage
Okay.
On the air.
on it.
Okay.
Yep.
Clarice?
With Eden and Sean. Oh, you're in the floor.
Sean,
Callie.
Oh, yeah.
Jessica Gonzalez busted off the windows of his house. Jessica claims she caught Gary's son cheating.
Okay, so you got home, or somebody called you and said there's a woman in the house.
Call my work phone again. All right, charge it up a little. Thank you.
At the Collin County Courthouse, Sean, and we want to thank Russell Wilson for being our legal advisor giving us legal advice on both sides, talking about the reaction to the verdict today. Both families, according to Lori Brown, are now in the courtroom, ready to start the next phase, the punishment phase.
Right. And the charge to the jury is what's being prepared now. We will have closing statements from both sides. And one of the things that could come out now even is the idea of sudden passion, meaning this was not some premeditated planned thing. This was in the moment. It was in the heat of the moment action. Again, hoping to mitigate to some degree in the minds of the jurors as they decide how long Carmelo Anthony must serve time as justice for the murder of Austin Metcalf.
And we've seen Judge Roach want to keep the progress moving, to keep this going, holding court on Saturday, which is very rare, and also telling the jury to bring clothes, to come to be prepared to possibly be sequestered tonight. However, Russell Wilson was telling us he thinks that with the way things may continue, this could end this evening in terms of what the punishment will be.
Yes, we're going to know hopefully fairly soon. We're going to know they are back on the record in the courtroom. Both sides have done their close. The jury's being brought in, so they're done with the charge now, I'm guessing? Or that's coming for the jurors? They're going to get the charge.
Presenting the charge, okay.
So it won't be long. Russell Wilson's timeline is pretty accurate. It won't be long before the jurors will get it and begin deliberating the punishment phase. We could have a decision by close of business today.
That's what he was saying, maybe 6 or 6:30, because right now it's coming up on 4 o'clock. Very large crowd outside, very large, even larger law enforcement. No signs of violence. Very spirited, though. Lots of charge comments going back and forth between both sides, but no Nothing violent, nothing violent. And there you can see people expressing their opinions, their reactions. And this is the way it should be.
So again,
No
Carmelo
violence.
Anthony is guilty of murder, and his defense team obviously hoping for something less. That did not happen. And we're going to continue, Clarice, covering the rest of the events of this day with this trial and beyond this day, because again, it's going to be one of those cases that works its way into law school. You watch.
Absolutely. And we're
Study.
seeing it unfold right before our very eyes. We want to thank you for joining us, and we're going to have live coverage on Fox 4. Stay with us.
Okay, and do I stay put? Or do you want me to just reference them?
Yeah, just reference
Just
them, I'll
ref-
zoom to them.
Okay, and step out of the way, or I stay put?
Stay put.
Perfect. Because I'm all on camera from what I believe, and it's not an overly long. It's just a live VO.
Yeah.
Go ahead and dial up my.
I think you should go and look out here, world. I'm not suggesting you go after anybody, but the woman doesn't have any allegiance to you. It's the guy who's got allegiance to you. Even if you believed that there was something.
Three hours of deliberations. Carmelo Anthony was found guilty of murder in the track meet stabbing death of Austin Metcalf. We are seeing live pictures outside of that very courtroom where a crowd has swelled following the verdict. And we're still waiting for jurors to begin deliberating a sentence. Thank you for joining us as we continue breaking news coverage on Fox 4 News at 4. I'm Eden Sheckholm. We have team coverage on the ground as well. Several Fox 4 crews getting live updates from inside of the courtroom and reactions on the ground. First, though, we want to bring in Fox 4's Sean Rabb, who has been part of our breaking news coverage all afternoon. He joins us now with what's going on at the moment in the punishment phase. Sean.
So at this very moment, the jurors are receiving the charge and will very soon begin deliberating and deciding the punishment for Carmelo Anthony. Listen, the charge says you have found the defendant guilty. It is now your duty to assess punishment. The issue of sudden passion has been raised. Sudden passion suggests this was not premeditated, this was not planned, that Carmelo Anthony didn't go to that track meet planning to exact violence and take someone's life. It was in the heat of the moment. And so because that has been raised, here's part of the charge to the jurors about sudden passion. If you determine sudden passion, you may not sentence him for more than 20 years. If not sudden passion, you can sentence him to life. Sudden passion caused by provocation by the person killed. So that's where the jury are. They're getting the charge, then they will return to that jury room and they will decide how long Carmelo Anthony will serve time in the Texas Department of Corrections for the murder of Austin Metcalf. That could happen between now and 6 o'clock. They could return with that decision before the day has ended.
And considering how quickly things have moved in this trial, we might as well, find out what they decide very soon, surely by the end of the day today. Thank you so much, Sean. Let's now head over to Fox 4's Alex Boyer, who has been live outside of the courthouse in McKinney all day. Alex, what can you tell us about the reaction out there and just how people are feeling at the moment? When we spoke to you about 2 hours ago, it looked like tensions were rising. Have things calmed down?
They have for the moment, Eden, as you mentioned, of course, like emotions, the day has ebbed and flowed with the way folks have been reacting to what they have been hearing. We've had a few people come up to us within the last hour and just kind of venting at us over what the verdict has been. But all in all, folks here have remained quite calm and peaceful. I can tell you that the crowd began to build first thing this morning outside the Collin County Courthouse as attorneys for both sides were presenting closing arguments. Then the jury got the case just before 11 a.m. Excuse me. During jury deliberations, many folks were out here live streaming on social media. Others were simply sitting under trees and talking to one another, and others were chanting and praying. When word got out that there was a verdict, the crowd all but began to gather near, excuse me, the steps of the courthouse. Over a dozen law enforcement officers came out and formed a line separating the crowd from the steps of the courthouse. And from my vantage point, most people seem to abide by the officers' orders. When the crowd learned that Carmelo Anthony had been found guilty of murder, I heard some audible gasps and moans, but many people stayed quiet. I think that they were really digesting what they learned. Then I heard a woman yell, "Let's stay together." And another woman got on a loudspeaker and started preaching. Some people have left over the past hour, but many are staying to see if the jury who convicted him will also reach a sentencing agreement today. Now, if we can come back out here live to my ground shot here, you may be able to see the law enforcement presence that you were just seeing from Sky 4 on the ground. You can see at the moment kind of a casual stance that they were all certainly lined up and a lot more active when that sentencing, or I should say verdict, first came down. Now, as we await what the sentencing will be for Carmelo Anthony, the fate, they are kind of more at ease, but keeping an eye on the crowd here, which again has remained relatively peaceful throughout the entire time that I have been here. Back to you.
It's good to know that things have been peaceful. We've really seen people on both sides, those who feel that, who agree with this sentencing or with this verdict, who are on Austin Metcalf's side and feel that justice was served, and those who are on Carmelo Anthony's side and feel as though that this was too harsh. Our Amelia Jones at the courthouse as well. She is in the middle of the crowd there. Amelia, what are you seeing? What are you hearing? What can you tell us?
Well, Eden, we have seen people gather in kind of large groups on and off all afternoon. I'm not sure if my photographer, Sam, can kind of pan in here over my right shoulder. This is kind of what I'm talking about, just larger crowds gathering, just really sharing their reactions with one another about the verdict, potentially about what they believe is happening inside the courtroom as journalists like our Fox 4 Lori Brown is sharing updates, and then the journalists on the ground are sharing updates. You might see a lot of cell phones up in the air. We know that social media, this case has really taken on a life of its own online. And so a lot of people are live streaming right now. They were live streaming before that verdict was issued, and they've kind of been live streaming ever since. Now, there are a couple of Collin County Sheriff pickup trucks and squad cars here. I have not seen any clashes with law enforcement. As you heard my colleague Alex Boyer say, the supporters and people who have gathered here have really respected law enforcement. Law enforcement has not had to kind of come towards the crowd, say anything. We haven't really even seen them interact much, but they do have a presence here, clearly. And they have created this barrier between the sidewalk here and the parking lot and the front of the Collin County Courthouse. I have been talking to people, and they shared their reaction with me after that verdict was issued. And one man told me that there is no winning on either side of this. Take a listen.
I just tell people this, man, is until you've been in this situation, you don't know how anybody's feeling. You know what I'm saying? And it's not, this is a no-win situation on either side, you know. You have a child that is not going to be here anymore. God bless his family. And to the family who's going through this situation with their son, it's unfortunate.
Now, we are hearing some, like Alex was talking, upset comments. We know that this trial, no cameras were allowed. It was not live streamed. It was not televised. But as someone who was in the courtroom every afternoon to hear testimony, I know that the journalists I sat next to, we were doing our best to share accurately what we were hearing and what we were seeing inside that courtroom. And the jurors were tasked to take all of the evidence that they heard in that testimony to come to this guilty murder verdict. Now, I'm not sure what people are waiting for out here. Obviously, we know that the punishment phase of the trial is going on right now. I'm not sure if they're waiting to see if any of the family members are going to talk or if any of the attorneys are going to talk. I haven't really had a chance to ask, why they are staying here. All I know is that they are, and we've just seen more people arrive to the parking lot. For now, Eden, that's what I'm seeing live out here. Back to you.
And again, we should note that Carmelo Anthony faces anywhere from 5 years to 99 years in prison. As Amelia mentioned, no cameras allowed in the courtroom. So we've had crews all over. We've had our Lori Brown inside of the courtroom. We've had Amelia Jones outside of the courthouse and Alex Boyer. So really, they have tried their best to share what both sides are arguing, what the defense is claiming, what the prosecution is claiming, and trying to paint the picture of what all is going on there. So as this case prepares for the punishment phase, Fox 4 is, of course, committed to keeping you up to date. We're going to be live on the Fox Local app when there is an update. So make sure that you turn on your notifications to receive the update right to your home screen. We will be right back.
National Weather Service offices across the country are painting the map orange today with heat advisories as temperatures begin to climb really for a good part of the country, especially through the Plains region and then way out across the West Coast. All of the orange that you see are active heat advisories, which does include kind of 3 separate sections of the state of Texas, way out west near El Paso, up in the Panhandle, and then a little bit closer to home, the Arklatex region there under heat advisory through 7 o'clock this evening. So we've got about 3 hours left of that. No North Texas counties are under that advisory, though, you know, we don't see all that much variation through most of the state. Now, the exception is El Paso. Right now, it's 102 degrees way out west. Obviously, we know why that heat advisory in place, but across the Panhandle, 92 in Amarillo matches the temperature here in Dallas at 92. It's because each office of the National Weather Service has different criteria that you have to meet in order to warrant an advisory or a heat warning. For us to have received an advisory today, we would have had to reach a temperature of 103 degrees for multiple days, 2+ days, or a heat index of 105. And for an excessive heat warning, it would have to be temperatures even warmer than that, both air temperature or heat index. So we're thankful today to not have met that criteria, though that doesn't diminish the fact that it is very warm today. Temperature-wise, right now, sitting just ahead of 415. We are in the 90s for the most part. A few spots still holding on to the upper 80s just barely. Bridgeport, Bowie, Gainesville, all sitting at 89. Again, the big airport out of DFW is at 92. Fort Worth matches that temperature, and we don't see all that much variability. And then we flip over to heat index, which is a measure of moisture in the atmosphere, how it feels on your body when you step outside in the shade. And it feels like 97 right now out of DFW. It feels like 99 out of Fort Worth. Feels like 100 degrees right now in Comanche. Really warm, to say the least, and really muggy. Dew points tell the story really well here. Our dew points have surged into the upper 60s and 70s and have held steady there for the past several days. Also, a reminder, we've got a whole lot of saturation at the low levels because of how much rain we've received. Now, all the moisture we've built up today, it's not quite rain-making moisture, at least as far as North Texas is concerned. The only rain we're really seeing across the state, it's sea breeze showers that have been streaming up from the Gulf Coast through even as far as central Texas, but staying well to our south. We'll keep things dry today, again tomorrow, through most of your Thursday, though I've gone ahead and put a 20% chance through the overnight hours Thursday, right on into your Friday, continuing into your Saturday. Then better coverage looks to greet us as we head for the end of the weekend, and temperatures will follow kind of an inverse trend. So as coverage is lower, temperatures are higher. We're into the mid-90s again tomorrow, into Thursday, a little dip as rain chances increase. By the end of the week, we surge to 96 for Saturday, and then we work in the right direction when more widespread rain is expected into North Texas. 92 for Sunday, 87 for Monday, hopefully to find a pretty significant cool down as we head for next week. I'll look ahead at your 7-day forecast here again. A lot of that attributed to the fact that a more unsettled pattern with a better chance for rain starts to move back into the forecast. Again, that starts by the end of the weekend and the start of next week. So for now, it's just hot and humid.
Listen, you're going to see a lot of Memorial Day sales, but we're the only ones with prices like this. This $1,000 Texas-built reclining sofa for just $699 while supplies last. Home Zone, we're different.
Well, we are just 2 days away from the world tuning in for the 2026 FIFA World Cup, and with just 5 days away until the first game at Dallas Stadium, Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton announced that he is investigating FIFA's ticketing practices. Paxton is citing reports of fans being misled about their seats and what they paid for them. This comes after the California, New York, and New Jersey Attorney Generals raised similar concerns last month. Paxton says his office received multiple complaints about buyers who paid for a premium seat and were later assigned to a less desirable spot. A group of kids in California got the surprise of a lifetime. Free tickets to a World Cup match. The 20 young kids are part of the soccer program at the Long Beach Boys and Girls Club. Los Angeles-based California Resources Corporation provided the tickets for these lucky students, and the kids were surprised and excited when they got the news.
No idea. No idea. How about you?
No idea. I thought we were just coming in to play a little bit of soccer.
And when you heard?
I was so amazed. I was like, this is going to be such a fun opportunity.
The free tickets will allow the young players to attend the Iran versus New Zealand match at Los Angeles Stadium on Monday, June 15th. Fox 4 is giving you more ways to get local news and weather during the World Cup. So KDFI Channel 27 is now going to be called Fox 4 Plus. So when World Cup soccer is airing on Fox 4, our newscasts will be on Fox 4 Plus. Just scan the QR code for information on how to find Fox 4 Plus over the air or through your TV service provider. More Fox 4 News after the break. President Trump is blaming Iran for the downing of a U.S. Army helicopter near the Strait of Hormuz. The two-man crew on board the Apache helicopter were rescued by a Navy drone boat after it went down earlier today. No injuries were reported. President Trump says the United States will respond to the attack. The incident happening as the president attempts to get peace deals back on track.
We're in the final throes of what will be a very, very good deal that will not allow in any way, shape, or form nuclear weapons, etc. And the Strait will open up right away. It'll open up immediately upon signing, which could be in 2 or 3 days.
Israel and Iran have agreed to cease attacks against each other, but Israeli attacks on Lebanon have continued. Those attacks have already threatened the peace deal's future. Wall Street nearly built back from a slump day as the shift away from chipmaker stocks resumed and Iran tensions were renewed. Micron, Nvidia, and Broadcom all saw losses today amid AI trade shakeups. Investors remain concerned over high oil prices and how that could impact the Federal Reserve's decision to raise rates later this year. We are still in the punishment phase in Collin County, where a jury is deliberating on how long Karmelo Anthony will sit behind bars. Stick with us on Fox 4 News as we get more from our team coverage in just a moment. But before we go to break, we are taking another live look outside. It is hot and sunny out there. We will also give you the latest on your forewarned 7-day forecast in just a moment.
Here for you and all North Texas. Fox 4 News starts right now with breaking news.
Welcome back. I'm Eden Shekel. Thanks for joining us this afternoon on Fox 4 at 4. We continue with breaking news this afternoon. A jury finding Carmelo Anthony guilty of murder. We have crews inside of the courthouse and crowds outside of the courthouse. And here in the Fox 4 studios, we are getting live updates as this punishment phase moves along today. Now, here's Fox 4's Sean Raby joins us right now from our digital studio. Sean, sudden passion seems to be the focus right now for the jury.
Yeah, and so the defense is wanting the jurors to consider that in a moment of terror, in a moment of fear, that Carmelo Anthony reached into his bag, pulled out this pocket knife, and in a defensive position, took the life of another person, Austin Metcalf. That's what the defense wants this jury to consider as they begin the punishment work in just a few moments. Sudden passion says it wasn't premeditated, it wasn't planned, that he didn't show up at that track meet looking for a fight. This happened in the moment. And that's what they would like for jurors to consider. The defense is hoping that jurors will take all of that to heart. Now, the prosecution, the state, on the other hand, they want to impress on these jurors that, you know what, the life of this young man is gone. He was a brother. He was a son. He was an athlete. This is what jurors are hearing from the prosecution in their closing statements here in the punishment phase, that there's no more life in his heart. He was there to running over those bleachers, but now rain has washed over his grave. That's a quote from the assistant prosecutor working with Bill Werski on this case. That's what jurors are hearing in this moment from both sides. So there's a lot of emotion and there's a lot of tension, even in these closing statements in the punishment phase, the sentencing phase of this trial. These jurors are in the middle. They're being pulled emotionally, both sides, by the defense and the prosecution. Both are asking them to see it their way. One side is asking for mercy. The other side is asking for no mercy. And these jurors will have to decide how long Karmelo Anthony will spend in prison.
Sean, thank you. Now we want to head over to Fox 4's Alex Boyer, who is live outside of the courthouse in McKinney. Alex, you've really been there since this morning. What can you tell us? What are you seeing out there?
Sure. Sean Rabb certainly hit it on the head out here as well. There has been a lot of emotion and certainly a lot of tension as the day has built and folks have learned the fate of Karmelo Anthony. Now at this point, they're waiting to see, as Sean mentioned, what that sentencing will be. Right now, calmness has prevailed and has been that way throughout the course of this day, aside from some people just reacting to the verdict and having some outbursts and some emotion to that verdict. You know, I can tell you that the crowd began to build, as I mentioned, really first thing this morning outside the Collin County Courthouse as attorneys for both sides were presenting those closing arguments. You know, they had 35 minutes on each side. Then the jury got that case before 11 a.m. And then during the jury deliberations while we were out here, many folks were live streaming on social media, giving updates, while others were simply sitting under the trees here out of the sun, and others talking to one another. And I can tell you that I also saw some folks chanting and praying. Now, when word got out that there was a verdict, the crowd all began to gather near the steps of the courthouse, which is where we are. About a dozen law enforcement officers came outside. Many remain here at this hour and formed a line separating the crowd from the steps of the courthouse. From my vantage point, most people seem to abide by the officer's orders. When the crowd learned that Karmelo Anthony had been found guilty of murder, I heard some audible gasps and moans, as I mentioned, but many people did stay quiet, I think really trying to digest what they heard. Then I heard a woman yell, "Let's stay together," and another woman got on the loudspeaker and started preaching. Right now you're looking at an overhead view from Sky 4, which really gives you some perspective for where we are here in the parking lot. Now a ground shot here. You can see what I've been talking about. Some of that crowd lingering here near the front steps, waiting for any kind of update from inside of the court room. We also may be able to see there beyond that crowd of people, some of those law enforcement officers, as I mentioned, just trying to keep somewhat of a barrier between the barrier that is physically there, the folks here in the parking lot, and then trying to keep things calm on the other side. That is the situation as it stands right now. I can tell you that while many people have left, some people maybe now just starting to get off of work or hearing what has happened are now starting to show up here in the parking lot, beginning to get full once again. Back to you.
It sounds like we've kind of seen a range of emotions even before the verdict was read. I remember earlier you said, you know, there was a prayer circle. At one point we did see things get tense, but it's good to know from people on both sides, but it's good to know that the crowd has remained relatively peaceful. Thanks so much, Alex. All right, well, Fox 4's Amelia Jones, also in McKinney for us right now. Amelia, what are you seeing?
Hi there, Eden. I'm seeing similar to what Alex is seeing here as well. We have a lot of people who are in lawn chairs taking shade away from the hot sun today. And I asked people, why are you staying here? The verdict already was issued and they told me that they wanted to stay here and find out the sentence. Somebody even told me that they wanted to stay here because they wanted to support the youth. And so I'm going to ask my photographer, Sam, to kind of pan off here. You can kind of see there's just some groups of people, again, like Alex was talking about, whether they are live streaming on their cell phones here. We know that this case has gained national, even international attention. And a lot of people have been streaming on several social media platforms before the verdict, after the verdict. And now as they are kind of getting news from journalists and others inside the courtroom as to what is going on right now in that punishment phase. I got a chance to speak to somebody after the guilty of murder verdict came down, and this person was telling me there really is no winning on either side of this. Take a listen.
There's no winners. No, absolutely not. I mean, I feel bad for the Carmelo Anthony family. I mean, they're in a sense losing their son for a little while too, you know. But the thing is they'll most likely be able to get him back. Austin Metcalf's folks, they won't ever get that young man back.
And now we know that this case has become racially charged, in large part due to misinformation and rumors spreading online. And I will say I have heard some racially charged comments out here after that verdict was read. And something that was brought up in jury selection and something that I spoke to several law experts about was the Batson challenge. The fact that 3 black female jurors were struck and the fact that there were no black jurors on this panel here. I will tell you, I was inside the courtroom and the jury was diverse. There were several Asian Americans as well as Indian Americans on the jury. But as I spoke to a criminal defense attorney not involved in this case yesterday, she was here as a court observer. She told me that, yes, a Batson challenge like that could be used in possible appeals. So, Eden, of course, we will have to see what the jury decides when it comes to that punishment phase. And of course, we might have to see what litigation, if any, comes after the trial is over. For now, Eden, I'll send it back to you.
That's right. We should mention this was a 12-person jury with 6 alternates. That included 11 women and 7 men. Thanks so much, Amelia. Okay, so we were live on air and on Fox Local as the verdict came in. We got instant reaction from Russell Wilson, a former Dallas County prosecutor who is not involved in this case.
We know is that, they've rejected the self-defense claim. They believed that the use of deadly force in response to the shove was excessive. And that's not necessarily a surprise based off of the totality of the circumstances. So I think, that was their verdict.
Now we'll see what happens with this jury in the punishment phase.
Right. So we're probably going to see a brief break, and the parties will get a chance to gather themselves, if you will, and the judge would have to decide if he wanted to go ahead and begin the punishment phase of the case, maybe in 15, 20 minutes or so, or if he wanted a break. Given that he's got the jurors sequestered, I think that they will get back started on testimony probably relatively quickly.
Let me ask you a question. You have a client who is a teenager who's a 3.8 GPA, has no bad record, has no juvenile history, has no engagement with law enforcement, has made this decision that has left him guilty of murder. How do you work in the punishment phase? What do you try to do to live?
I mean, I think you gotta first you want to console your client and the family briefly, but you're going to have to quickly turn to your anticipated punishment evidence, which is going to be the state again going first. You're going to hear more character information. It takes a while when you get an adverse verdict for the person to really accept and understand it. The state may be moving to have his bond held insufficient, meaning that if he walked in the courthouse today, that he won't be walking out tonight. Your client's going to have a whole lot of anxiety. The range of punishments, 5 to 99 years. When you hear a guilty verdict of murder, you're certainly going to see your life flash before you because you recognize you could face imprisonment for the rest of your life. The attorney, if you get everybody calmed down, you need to start thinking of your most mitigating factors. Probably here will be age of the offender and no criminal history.
So one very unusual aspect of this case has been where some of the reaction is coming from. Several state politicians have issued statements in their official capacity, including Jared Patterson, the Republican state rep whose district includes parts of Frisco. Patterson called Austin Metcalf's murder a senseless and heartbreaking tragedy and said today's murder conviction is justice served. Texas GOP Chair Abraham George echoed that sentiment and said the Texas Republican Party stands with the Metcalf family. And on the other side are Karmelo Anthony supporters who have condemned this verdict. The activist group Next Generation Action Network has spoken in support of the family on multiple occasions. The group's leadership said it will continue to provide the family support through a likely appeals process once the punishment is decided. So we want to go back to Fox 4's Sean Rabb with more updates from inside of the courthouse with the punishment phase. Sean, I know obviously we can't have any cameras inside of the courtroom there, and we've been getting updates from Lori Brown, who is inside of the courtroom. So what are some updates that you're hearing?
Yeah, and you know what? We talk about that a lot because we've become accustomed in state district courts, especially in Dallas County and the big trial recently with the Tanner Harner case over in Tarrant County. They have cameras in courtrooms, but they've not always been there. We've not always covered cases with cameras. It's been with reporters chronicling the events in the courtroom and then sharing those. And that's what we've been getting in this trial. Right now, I want to go back